It's yet another big game for Michigan on the road. We're going to get to it in the manifesto. It's all there with Connor Stalions. Let's talk about it on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hull, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. We've got the sign stealer himself, Connor Stalions, with us. I want to thank all of our everydayers that check out the show every day. Thank you for making us your first listen. And we've got lots to talk about today. We are going to start off with what happened. Looking back to Central Michigan in the first two segments, and then segment 3, we will get to Nebraska. Before we even get to Nebraska, though, Connor, I am super concerned that, you know, with you here and everything that you did about Nebraska, because Matt Rhule's concerned. So I have to get how. As someone who was in, you know, you were at that game in 2023, I just have to know, how on earth would Michigan's offense know the offensive play on that one play that the Nebraska defensive player got injured? How did you manage to get the Michigan offense to know the offensive play?
I must say, yeah, that game. When you said I was there for the Nebraska game, first I had to think about which Nebraska win we were talking about, 21, 22, or 23. In 23, their first signal in the entire game happened when we were winning 14-0. We were already up 14-0 when they signaled for the first time. And then when we're on offense, we huddle anyway. So
yeah, but how did JJ McCarthy know the offensive play? Like, that's the big question.
How would JJ know Michigan's offensive play?
Yes. How on earth would he even know that? I look at Matt Rhule and I'm like, you got a point, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's confounding. Have fun with that, Matt Rhule. Let's talk Bryce Underwood. Let's talk Bryce Underwood next segment. Let's talk about Michigan's offense in general. What did you see against Central Michigan? I mean, we all kind of know what changed, but you've got a lot better insight than most. So what happened that made that game go away?
Well, I think as it relates to Bryce and the quarterback position, they allowed him to make mistakes first and foremost. And he made a couple. The first play of the game, and then his pretty careless interception. But, you know, sometimes it's better to have mistakes to correct on film than it is to have, you know, very little to coach up on tape. And you kind of think of it like a spectrum from 0 to 100. Well, we kind of know, relatively speaking, what happens when you limit him at 0, so to say, in that Oklahoma game. But you also want to stretch it as far as you can, ideally, you know, against or in a game that you feel confident you'll win no matter what, and kind of see what happens when you operate at 100. And then from there, you take the film from both operating at 0, operating at 100. You kind of find that sweet spot. Maybe it's around 85, 90 in this analogy. But I think that's the first thing I noticed, that the play calling allowed him to make mistakes. And he, for the most part, played a very, very good game, minus those couple mistakes. But again, it's good to have that on film moving forward. So now you know what not to do in certain situations. So that's the first thing I noticed. I think they got Bryce on the move enough, right? They ran a lot of boots. They ran a lot of sprint outs, and got him comfortable getting out of the pocket. Not that he's not comfortable in the pocket. I'll get to that in a sec. And then the last thing I noticed, you know, just off the top of my head, is the run pass balance was very good. They threw the ball enough on first down. I know coming off the Oklahoma game, it felt like it was a lot of run pass, run screen. but they threw the ball on first down quite a bit. And I think that's going to be key moving forward.
Well, it was good to see that because, yes, they were predictable before. This one felt a lot more unpredictable. I'm just curious, like, are these things that you feel can and will be replicated this weekend? And just what is your confidence? We'll get to Nebraska later, but like, what is your confidence that this is what Michigan can just be going forward?
I mean, pretty confident. I know the opponents are a little different. However, New Mexico, I know UCLA is going through their own problems, but New Mexico looks like a pretty darn good football team. But regardless, I think the 3 games we have is a good sample size for anyone to see, to see the difference. What happens when you, quote, let Bryce loose as opposed to kind of limiting him and protecting him a little too much, maybe. So I think moving forward, I think it's pretty clear there's really not a choice, right? So I feel pretty confident. I love what Biff's saying in all the press conferences, and I think they kind of have to at this point, right? Which is good.
What before we move to talk more specifically about Bryce, what other things did you notice in this game that you felt gave Michigan success in the against Central Michigan?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on it where there was enough unpredictability, and whether it was an end around or mixing in some screen game, not making that like a an every possession thing. Enough boots, sprint outs, drop back, quick game, RPO. It was a little bit of everything, and it was pretty unpredictable from a scouting standpoint, right? And so I think that's going to be the bread and butter because there's weapons everywhere on this offense, right? So I think that's key. I also think obviously the Jordan Marshall, Justice Haynes 1-2 punch is something that, in addition to Bryce, or you could argue that's still the identity, right? And then Bryce is the add-on. Either way, however you look at it, it's a true dilemma. Which one do you really focus on in your defensive game plan? So that's key. I will go out and say that Justice Haynes, I know the one that got called back, but man, similar to that Oklahoma run, he is so fast for having such a low center of gravity. I know it's only 3 weeks in, but man, he in open space, he looks like Dono. He's got the speed of Dono, and then in the box, he's got the low center of gravity of Blake, and then he hasn't had to do it too much, but you definitely get the sense that he's got the power, the strength and the power of Hassan. He's kind of seems to be in a way a little like a combination of all three, taking some of the strengths from each one of them. So that's definitely very pleasant for the Michigan fan base.
Well, I want to talk more about Bryce. I know you do too. I hope you get to meet him someday. I know we just met, but maybe I can introduce you to. All right, let's go into more about Bryce. Let's do that here in just a moment. But before we do, it's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down for Michigan. Bryce Underwood obviously delivered in a big way. My favorite play of the entire game wasn't one of his runs. It was that layered pass to Hogan Hansen, an absolute perfect NFL caliber throw that people just need to recognize. That's not something that most college quarterbacks could make, as it is. When the pressure was on, which was on himself to make that type of play, he came through. Underwood did. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance, not a fluke, because we know he's got that type of arm. Underwood is on a streak. And just like Underwood delivered for Michigan, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. All right, we're going to continue on here momentarily. But before we do, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it's player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup is quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, we're still here with Connor Stalions. Connor, you had some interesting insight into kind of getting more into Bryce Underwood and what he brought to the table against Central Michigan. Let's start with the running, right? 9 carries, 114 yards on the day, 2 touchdowns. Easily his best. He didn't really do anything on the ground in the first 2 games. What did you see as far as the quarterback run?
First, people are going to talk about that. I'm assuming people have been talking about that all week. Let's set the record straight, though. There were only 2 design runs for him, right? One was what everyone will remember, that touchdown. It was a quarterback counter, Q counter bash, so back away from the scheme. The guard and the tight end pulling for Bryce, and then I forget who it was going away from the scheme, and he had a read, which, and I'll get to the second one, that it was just a simple zone read that he pulled. At the end of the day, that's design runs is not Bryce's forte, right? And I do think it was perfect. Just 2 design runs, just mix it in. That was great. On the zone read, it was like a loss of 3 yards. He should have given it. But then the Q run obviously was designed for him. So at the end of the day, he should just default to whatever the offensive line is blocking for. And I think 17 of his 114 rushing yards were on design runs. The rest, 97 of them, were on scrambles, extending plays with his feet in the pass game. And I think that's his game. That's where he's in high schools. Still now you can see last week he had, so that's like 85% of his rushing yards were on design pass plays. He had scrambles for 16 yards, 9, 28, 11, 5, 10, 18. One of them for a touchdown on that 4th and 1. So I think that's huge because, when we get into Nebraska in the next segment, Nebraska loves to play man on defense. Love to be in cover 1, and then on certain 3rd and longs, they love to get into cover 2 man. But obviously when you're in man, all the DB's eyes are on the receivers. So that's a big opportunity for Bryce this week, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on Nebraska's pass rush lanes to stay disciplined in which shoulder they own in the pass rush. So I think that's huge for him to really put on tape, especially going into this week. People were calling for Bryce to run the ball, insinuating, put it in the play calling. But again, that's not him. So that was, that's it. Is 85% of his production on the ground was in the pass game.
So to that end, it kind of does feel like, just let Bryce be Bryce instead of just trying to essentially tailor make him into whatever the vision was before the season, I guess. Or do you think that this was going to kind of come about one way or the other? And what else do you feel like he has on the table for him?
I think it goes back to what I said at the very beginning about there's playing tight, there's playing loose, and then there's playing careless. And, I think the Oklahoma game, whether it was the play calling or whatever it was, I think everyone felt like he was his hands were kind of tied behind his back, relatively speaking. And now you see hey, when you let him loose, when you let him play loose on the verge of careless, that's where you're going to get these plays where you really see his full potential. And on that topic, again, I think it's good to get some carelessness on tape to correct, right? You want to test that limit. Like I said, loose on the verge of careless. Obviously, you don't want to be playing careless, but in the past game, he had that first play of the game, and then he tried to throw a post against a post safety, and then there's no other way to say it, the careless interception he threw. So those were obviously the big negatives from the game. Then there's a couple. I think there was only one in this game where he had I think it was Marsh, or maybe it was Channing Goodwin. I think it was Goodwin, like 5 yards in front of him, and he's throwing a freaking laser. He take a little touch off that, but those are the negatives. The positives, I mean, he first and foremost obviously can put the ball anywhere on the perimeter. He can deliver the ball from point A to point B with zip more efficiently than pretty much anyone in the country. But then you hit on it, his layered balls. The first one to Samaj, the touchdown, just enough touch that Samaj was able to adjust. That was perfect. And then I think it was, you mentioned the Hogan one on that little fade, but he also had, I think it was a play or two before, a sail concept to, that one was to Marsh. That was, again, perfect touch. So he's really finding, not that he's always been great in his high school career with this, but now you can see him really putting, the right touch in the right situations, in the right concepts. So that's big for him. And then, I think moving forward, it's just how can they continue to mix all of it in, right? In a big game, as opposed to, kind of what we saw against Oklahoma. You don't want to get into the run, screen, run, pass. So mixing in enough boots, mixing in enough sprint out, getting him going, designing it, and then he feels more and more comfortable throughout the game, and he'll scramble for 100 rushing yards.
I got to ask one more quick question. And this actually comes from my conversation with our mutual friend, Steve Days. He had asked me on Saturday, he had said, like, because there's all the talk that, Sharon had last week, or, before he got suspended, of you have to have two quarterbacks if you're going to run the quarterback. But as Steve's put it, he's like, wouldn't it make more sense with a guy of his size that he's probably less likely to get injured when he's actually running compared to getting blasted in the pocket?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I get both sides of it. Right. And I think, Sharon's comment about the whole two quarterback deal. If you run one, you better have two. That I do agree with from the standpoint of design quarterback runs, right? You're not going to see Bryce is not Alex Orji, right? Alex is built like a linebacker. Not that Bryce isn't built right, but he's still young. He can still add more weight to him, but until he gets like a Josh Allen. But I do agree with Sharon from the standpoint you're not going to just run Q counter every play. You're not going to, the run game is not centered around Bryce. And let's be very clear. Yes, Bryce was the leading rusher. But again, 85% of his rushing yards came from the pass game. So the actual run game, the design run game, is always going to be centered around Justice and Jordan. And it should be. The pass game, really, it's just giving Bryce the green light, right? Which you're hearing Biff say a lot in these press conferences. Just having the green light to extend plays, which is really what JJ was good at too at Michigan. He'd extend plays. Now, JJ and Bryce have very identical mindsets. Bryce is, especially at this point in his career relative to JJ, he's definitely a little bigger than JJ was. So you watch him truck a guy. Like there was that one, I think it was at the end of the first half. He scrambled. It was only for like 5 or 6 yards, but he can kind of truck the dude, and you like to see it, right? Because to your point, you'd rather see him, deliver than sit back there in the pocket and potentially get hit. So yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think people need to understand the context of like Sharon's quote. It's not that, we're going to limit Bryce. It's we're not going to make him the centerpiece of the run game, which you saw in the Central game, and that's exactly how it should be. Because again, you give him the green light in the pass game to extend plays, and they'll rush for 97 yards.
Should open up a heck of a lot more in all facets of the offense. All right, we've got to move on here, and we'll get into Nebraska. Let's do that here in just a moment. But before we do, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intent and this same intention to how we craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls, like our players, we sweat every detail. Because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Connor, let's get into Nebraska. You have a lot of thoughts. I know that you, I think you said, I think your mom went to the season opener. Your buddy went to week 2. I was at week 3 for some reason. So you got a lot of input as to what you were looking at. So what do you see from Nebraska? Let's start with their offense and Dylan Raiola, and kind of where do you think Michigan can attack? Why do you think Michigan's going to be successful in this?
So Dylan is very good in the pocket, right? But he's not, unlike his long lost twin, Patrick Mahomes, he's not the greatest out of the pocket. And I think the first thing for, I guess, both fan bases to understand is, again, I'm going to revisit Oklahoma. The biggest problem defensively for Michigan was facing 3 things: the quarterback run game, design run game, which also trickled into Mateer extending plays, right? Kind of like what we're talking about with Bryce. The second was empty. They went empty a lot, spread us out. And the third was unbalanced, where the last guy on the line is an offensive lineman. And oftentimes they did all 3 at the same time. I highly doubt, in fact, Nebraska's even said this in their press conferences, that they're not going to run Dylan a whole bunch, right? So I highly doubt you see what truly gave Michigan problems in that Oklahoma game. And you'd imagine that they've corrected a lot of those mistakes. So what is Nebraska good at offensively? Well, first of all, like I said, Dylan's really good in the pocket. They're really good in quick game, and they mix in enough drop back that, he's really good. When they have a clean pocket and he has a little bit of time to get the ball out, that's where they're most efficient. They've been running the ball well, but let's also set the record straight. It's against Cincinnati, Akron, and who do they play? Houston Christian,
yeah.
So Michigan's front 7 is going to be a little different than all 3 of those teams. And I mean, even Cincinnati, they ran the ball against Cincinnati, but it wasn't, this groundbreaking kind of like what you're used to seeing Michigan running the ball. And I don't know how good Cincinnati is either, with all respect to them. But for all we know, New Mexico could be just as good as Cincinnati, and the transitive property never works in football. So they also have a good receiver room. Number 6, Key, the transfer that came in, he's really good. Number 13 is really good. So they got a good receiver room. They have a good quarterback. However, when the pocket collapses, that's where some questions start to raise with Dylan. So I think the keys for Nebraska's offense and or Michigan's defense is can they handle Michigan's front, right? Because you're not going to be able to just run the ball from even Oklahoma. They couldn't just run the ball on Michigan, with the exception of that last drive where they milked the clock. But again, that was a lot of those three, the quarterback, Q run game, the empty, and the unbalanced. You saw a lot of that in that drive as well. You're not going to see that from Nebraska. Can Nebraska align in 11 personnel and just run the ball on Michigan? Probably not. So they're going to have to be really good in the perimeter run game, which Oklahoma was as well. So they'll have to be really good in the perimeter run game, and then they have to stay ahead of the sticks. Because if Nebraska, similar to what I said about Michigan against Oklahoma, if Michigan gets into second and third and long, you're playing right into Venable's hands. Well, now it's the same thing but flipped for Nebraska. If they get into second and third and long, you're playing right into Wink's hands, in the hands of the scheme. And if you can't run the ball or be extremely efficient in quick game, which they have been, so, it goes both ways. If Nebraska is very efficient in quick game, constantly staying ahead of the sticks, that's where it's going to be a problem for Michigan. But if Michigan can force an incompletion here and there in the quick game and force second, third, and long, that's where I think you're going to see this, turn into at least on that side of the ball, a very low scoring game.
All right. So what else did your mom tell you about what she saw from when she got to go and see Matt Rhule's stuff, and what other spiders that you put out there?
So my mom's scouting report of Nebraska is really focused on their defense. She told me that Nebraska is about 60% man defense. And they are about 63% one high, cover one or cover three. And when they go one high, so I talked about this a little bit with Michigan, Oklahoma, what Oklahoma did to us. It's relatively easy to tell when Nebraska is going to be in a two high call or a one high call. And when they go too high, they're usually playing cover two or cover four, unless it's third and a mile and they're in cover two man. But when they're in one high, they're 85% cover one man defense. Their bread and butter is playing man, adding a number in the box and saying, beat us on the perimeter. Well, I relate that to what I said about Bryce earlier, where he had 97 rushing yards solely off of pass plays, scrambling. Well, if you're playing 85% man defense when you're one high, so Bryce is going to pre-snap. He knows you're in one high. He can see you're in one high. And when he gets that look, you're man-to-man 85% of the time. Either one, whatever the concept is, if he has a guy that he likes to go to, he likes the matchup, he takes it. But this is where Nebraska's defensive line there's going to be a lot of stress on them to stay disciplined in their pass rush lanes, because when you're a defensive lineman and you got man behind you, I mean, you can't afford to let that quarterback get out of the pocket, especially with what Bryce did, rushing for almost 100 yards on pass plays. So I think that's my first thought. Again, thanks to my mom for really pointing out these tendencies.
Kelly Stalions has been just such an asset in this entire thing.
Big asset, yes. And then personnel wise for Nebraska, number 8, Singleton, the safety, he's really good. He's their field safety. And then if they ever go 3 high, sometimes they move the nickel back to be a third safety. He's like the middle safety. He's very aggressive, likes to take chances. I obviously hope it comes back to bite him once in a while. Sometimes he's a little undisciplined in his angles, but he's over aggressive, and I'm sure they take that risk. Number 0,
they said the kid can't throw the deep ball. It's all right. You said number 8, safety, I couldn't help myself with just a quick playback of JJ versus Lathan Ransom.
No. Nebraska's linebackers are pretty solid. Number 0, right? I think he's really good. He can run, he can block the struck. And then up front, I don't think they have him listed as a starter, but number 96, I forget his name. He gets the most. He ends up with the most reps. He's very stout in the run game, very consistent. And then number 15 is their Jack, who can kind of play stand-up linebacker. He's pretty versatile. He can set an edge, but he's good at getting to the quarterback, and he can drop in coverage. He can do a little bit of everything. He's out there 90% of the game too. So they have really good personnel. They also, I said they like to play man a lot. They do. When they go too high, they like to play cover 2 a lot, which is usually a pass down coverage, but they use it a lot for. They have really aggressive corners in the run fit. But they're sound on defense, a little predictable. But we'll see. Again, they've played not the greatest competition in the world. That doesn't mean that their defense isn't good. It'll just be the first test, right? I mean, and you could flip it back and say, well, Michigan failed their first true test. But sometimes you'd rather have already taken one than taking your first one in this coming week.
You mentioned 15, the linebacker. It's just, it's you think and you wonder what it could have been like if they had a guy that also wears number 15 for Michigan. Yeah, if they just had a guy like Ernest Hausman, if they could have gotten him on campus and
could have recruited him.
Yeah, it's right from their backyard too.
I know. But, I
know. Nonetheless. All right, Connor, we got to run. We've both got busy days here. So thank you for coming on. Thank you to all of you who have watched and listened. We do appreciate you. We will be back tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work. If I'm going to do a car show, do it late. Last year we did not 2 years ago, rather, I did a show in front of Memorial Stadium. We'll figure it out. There will be a show at some point on Friday. It could be early, it could be late. So stay tuned for that.
Thanks for Columbus too.
Yeah, exactly. Got to go to Columbus. Check out I
don't even know if they play this week, but
yeah, I think they're on bye, but I think there's
there might be practice.
I'm hearing that they leave certain doors to the Woody unlocked. So especially for someone wearing a fake mustache, if you want to, anyway. Thank you to all of you out there. Thanks to Connor. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.